with Pop Culture Uncovered, and I know it's the moment you all waiting for. We're back!
Yay!
That's right, the lovely angels are back. So, ladies, I'm going to go to our ladies on the phone. Ivana, say hey.
Hello.
Hey. Oh, my bad.
And Britt and Ivana are saying hey at the same time.
You said everyone.
So, Ivana, give me a quick little background on who you are and why you're here.
Yes. So I work for the Murder Mystery Company. I love murder. I love being alive. And what I love about being alive is I can watch all these incredible movies and shows with fantastic people, and I can't wait to talk about all of them with all of you.
That's sweet. Awesome. And Britt, talk to me.
Hey, so I am getting back into the groove. You can find me as Karanai Kiva. I am a seamstress and artist that's located in Baltimore. I just do a lot of stuff, man.
Just do a lot of stuff, man. Just do a lot of stuff.
All right. I art, I sew, I go to cons, I have weird hair, I like to party, I like tea. There's a lot happening.
Fair enough. And we have our most delightfully aged wine of a lovely angel, Faith Gascon.
Hello, this is the sensational 70, Faith Gaskin, and I'm the proud mother of the thespian here, Belle Burr. I'm also a skin consultant with the best skincare products in the world, Jafra, and the best hair care products for Gaskin Burr.
There you go. And Allie, hit me.
No, that would be mean.
Yes, it
would. I'm Allie, also Rogue Empress. I'm a cosplayer. I drink a lot and talk randomly. I'm scatterbrained, and I do stuff for Pop Culture Uncovered sometimes when they let me.
And you're also the host of the Walking Dead podcast and weekly viewing party. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, and that'll be coming up next month.
And also myself, I'm here. Belle Burr, actor, writer, giant nerd. You can find me at Belle Burr on Twitter and Instagram. At Drop 3 for shows, which we will be doing a show for St. Patrick's Day. God help us all. And you can find me on stage with the Murder Mystery Company with Ivana, and in my one-woman show, A Woman Alone, with TikTok Mind. So, if you want to come out and see me perform for you, let me know. All right, so we are recording our Black History Month podcast. And we kind of want to just jump into it. So we're going to talk about Gordon Parks, who is not as well known as many people as he should be. He was an activist and artist from the 40s on, because he had his first child in 1944. So to give you an idea, he was working up until his death, I believe, in 2006. So, Mom, you were the one that picked Gordon for Black History Month. So why don't you start us off?
Well, the reason I picked Gordon Parks is basically his photography is phenomenal, not just in its artistry, but in the fact that it depicted what was going on in the
Great Depression.
Yeah, the Great Depression.
Yeah,
during the 30s. And his depiction of Jim Crow and what that, pictures speak louder than words about what was going on for African Americans at that time called coloreds in the South.
At that time, she says, at that time.
Yes, it should be at that time, but nonetheless, we're digressing.
Moving on.
Nonetheless, photographer. One of the pictures that he did was of a, and I wrote it down too.
Lily.
Thank you.
American Gothic.
American Gothic.
Mhm.
Where there was a charwoman and she's holding a mop and there's a broom in the background with the American flag in the background. And then he comes back later and he does more pictures of her and her family. They show, the depiction of the kind of hard work that women had to go through just to maintain their families. But that's not all he did.
Shut your mouth.
Shaq. He did the first Shaft
And the second.
and the second Shaft,
Yeah.
and recruited Richard Roundtree to be
Shaft. I honestly, until you brought him up, did not know. I knew who he was because I knew his photography. I never made the connection that the Gordon Parks, who was the first Black photojournalist for Life magazine, was the same Gordon Parks who directed Shaft. Like, there was no connection in my brain. And then I started reading his biography and I was just like, there's a lot there. It's almost overwhelming to see it. What about you guys?
That's so funny because it's the opposite for me because my dad has been such a huge Shaft fan that I knew him as the original director, but I didn't know for all the other things. And as I started to look through too, he really broke a lot of color barriers by being such a Renaissance man and seeing all the wonderful things that he's accomplished.
It's amazing. I didn't know he was the first Black Vogue photographer either, which is insane. Like, he went to Vogue, I think, came to him and it was like, you do photo shoots for me. And I'm just like, can you imagine in the 40s, Vogue coming to a Black man and going, you're that good.
Right?
You're that good. We need you. What about you, Alana?
I was overwhelmed by all the things he did because it seemed like, it seems like we all just are aware of him for like one thing or another, but this man, it's like, I'm sure people know him for like basketball and not his art at all because he was like on a touring basketball team.
I forgot about that part. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, he was a professional basketball player and a pro football player. And apparently he beat his team beat the Harlem Globetrotters. Like, yeah, I'm like, what is happening? How many different things did you do? It's so cool.
Really a Renaissance man, truly.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But also like, I was just kind of taken aback because there seemed like a lot of things in his life happened in the year 1928. There was just like this massive amount of disruption and opportunities and losses because he had been in like a segregated school up until 9th grade, and at this point he was integrating into an integrated high school, and then and that's around the time that his mother died, so he moved with his sister. He got a job as a waiter, and then around Christmas his brother-in-law kicks him out, so he was like sleeping and riding in train cars to stay warm while he was on break from school, and then also got a job at a brothel playing piano around this time as well. So I was like, what a year. And not even a full year. It seemed like a good chunk of this stuff that was intense happened like right at the end of the year. So it's I haven't had an end of the year like that. So I really wonder what that was like for him.
I mean, when you think about how old he must have been, because I was thinking like the brothel thing, I'm thinking, first of all, the difference in mindset. Who lets like an underage 13-year-old play the piano at a brothel? But work was work.
The 20s.
He was born like
the 20s did?
Yeah, for real. The 20s did. The 20s did. You can just explain it all. It was the 20s.
60. That's still pretty young.
He was very young.
Yeah.
And like you said, a whole lot of tragedy happened within like a 1 year time frame of awful. And yet the fact that he's still like, I don't know many of us, period, but especially at 16, who would go, I've been kicked out of my home. I have to work. I'm still trying to go to school. Let me take photos of what's going on around me so I can just kind of like see the beauty in the world. And the fact that all of this insane tragedy, because his mom did die that same year. So all of this same tragedy. And at 16, he goes, I'm going to try to see prettiness. I'm going to try to see the beauty. I don't know many people who would go through even a tenth of the things he went through at that age, much at any age, really, and who would turn around and use that to find art, to find beauty in their tragedy. What about you, Allie? What were you?
So, thank you, Baltimore County Schools. I've never heard of this man before until this evening.
Is that sarcasm?
Yeah, it's the darndest thing. And he is not related to Rosa Parks.
What?
Just so you know.
Yes. Was that something that you thought for a second?
I mean, I'm just helping out the white people right now because, I'm sorry I went to Baltimore County Schools, so we don't know a lot about this topic. But yeah, it seems like he had an amazing life. I know what Shaft is, so that's great. I just didn't realize.
Well, I mean, let's speak to that real quick because that is one of the things, and his one of the reasons why I wanted to include him is that his work has affected our culture, and a lot of people don't even know who he is.
Right.
But when I saw the photographs, I'm like, I have seen that photograph before. I've seen that photograph before. I didn't know that he wrote an entire ballet about Martin Luther King that's still being performed all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And it speaks to the erasure of Black people from the consciousness. And this man was around from the 1920s until 2006, and very few people outside of the Black community know who he is. And the ones in it, all of us, as we said earlier, all of us know him for one specific thing. We have no comprehension of his body of work until we started doing the research for this podcast. And that, I think, is like you said, it's not just Baltimore County.
Yeah, I know.
It's the country. I mean, it's people finding out about the Tulsa massacre on Watchmen all over again. We have erased Black culture and Black people from the culture in this country when we've contributed so much. So, maybe we should, I want to try to make sure that as we're going forward this year and doing more Lovely Angels podcast, I want to try to highlight people who maybe are unsung heroes. And I want to say thank you, Mom, for bringing him up, because had you not brought him up, I would have, like I said, I would have never made the connection from the photographer to Shaft or any of the stuff that he did in the many books he wrote. You can look him up at the Gordon Parks Foundation and .org, and there's several scholarships that have been set up in his name. His family has continued to keep his legacy of his artwork is around the country and around the world. There's artwork. There's a museum in Kansas. There's a museum in I want to say Minnesota. There's his stuff is at the Met. His stuff is at the Baltimore Museum of Art. So if you want to know more, look him up. And if you want more, just look deeper for things that might be out there, because we've always been here, but our culture has not always been, how do you say, respected.
Respected, right?
Yeah.
One more thing, if you ladies get an opportunity to get his book, The Learning Tree. It's a novel by Gordon Parks.
It's an autobiography, and it was his first film. He directed it. He turned it into a film. Yeah. So if you get a chance. Yep. So if you get a chance to read it, please do.
Yeah. That's what made him the first African-American writer and filmmaker, right?
That's the one. That was the first one that did it. That's what put him through.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Queen. You know who it is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about. I think I need to get a glass of water.
Oh, hello. So, Missy, first of all, if you haven't bought the new album, you guys, there has not been a track off this new album that has not been lit. And also, if you haven't been watching the videos, each video is telling a story. So each one you don't have to, but if you need to kind of start with Throw It Back and then go to the next song in the list. But let's get into who Missy is. I'm going to start with you, Britt. Who does Missy mean to you?
She was, for me, like because there was back in like the 90s era, there was the alternative Black women that had a voice on, like, when it came to the hip hop era that I really resonated with. And Missy was always the forerunner of that. Because there was like Little Kim, Janet, when she had the scepter in. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And it was like Queen Latifah was there too, a whole bunch of them. But like Missy was always the forefront, at least for me, because she was that chunky Black woman that was also empowering women and making sure that the industry heard the voice of not only just women in general, but Black women as well. And she really carved out that niche for that, that we're more than just that stereotype. We can like other things. We can like having nice things. We can like just being cool. We can like actually pursuing guys instead of them pursuing us. And it was one of those kind of like new age way of thinking when it came to Missy stepping onto the scene. And that's what it was for me, to think, to really just not just think differently, but accept the fact that yes, I think differently, and there are other Black women that are doing it too.
What about you, Ivana?
Oh boy. So Missy. I have so many feelings. I just love her so much because, and I never really thought about why. I've always, been a fan of hers, but I didn't really think about why until today. And I think that has a lot to deal with the fact that when her music was coming out, especially her Miss E So Addictive album, that was always on, always on TV, on MTV, and the music videos and everything. It was just, I think I was in elementary school at that time, so like late elementary school, and it was so cool to see someone who was being, goofy and doing like such creative things as a Black woman, because I feel like when you're, especially when you're that younger age in school, it's like, okay, well, and you're in a school that's like mainly a white population, it's like, okay, I'm allowed to be two things. I'm allowed to be the cool Black girl, or I'm the tough, unapproachable Black girl, and those are my only options. So it was cool to see Missy just doing her thing, dancing around, goofy with all this, his head's getting bigger and all these different things going on, and it's your it felt like permission to be myself, which is more that goofy playfulness that she has so much. And my God, her videos, I just have to say, her videos were such an illusion. I thought that she was more than 2 feet tall for all of my life, and now I find out, I just seen music videos recently, I'm like, where'd she go? Where did put the rest of her? An illusion. But I adore her.
Yes. What about you, Allie?
So Missy to me is driving around with my girlfriends on a Friday night, listening to, I guess it was a CD at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't on cassette.
Yep.
and just blaring it out the window,
Yep.
yelling, screaming the lyrics out the window. First having a female vocalist on the radio, but that carried through, so popular, was awesome to have that. The sexuality part of it, just kind of, some of the lyrics made you comfortable with your own self, with exploring. I'm dildo, like having sex toys. It was, it was like, okay, this is, and not like looked down upon. It wasn't like trashy sounding. It was like, all right, this is fine. And it was just fun. Like it was fun music. It is fun music. I still listen to it getting ready if I'm going out on a Saturday night.
Yes.
It gets you pumped up. It's energized. She's beautiful. She's talented. She's strong. She just has this exuberance. And I'm so glad that she's still going strong.
For me, Missy was, to some extent, what Ivana was saying about how it was permission to be yourself. Missy, to me, is one of the more authentic artists. Missy is always Missy, if that makes sense. And excuse that person. But she is one of the more authentic artists. And what I also found was that she was, for me, the first Blurred I ever actually saw, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And it wasn't was a sort of a Dwayne Wayne sort of kind of nerdy, but no, Missy was proud of her nerdiness. The only Blurs I saw were Dwayne Wayne on a Different World, and what is the young lady who was the voice of Storm on the X-Men, who was also on A Different World. But there was so little representation, and it was such a narrow focus for that representation.
Yeah.
So if you were a Black nerd, then you had to have the glasses, and you had to be like a little prissy, and you either had to be a hippie or you had to be, uptight and, very proper or whatever. And Missy was a Black nerd who owned her body, who owned her size, who owned her sexuality, who was just as aggressive as the dudes, but yet beautiful and yet feminine and yet funny. And she was all of those things. And then there's the music. Because I saw her and I was like, I see myself in a way that I had not seen myself up until that point. And she was sexy. And yes, all of those, this is not taking away from anybody else. But Missy took the very tropes that men in videos always used, and she turned them and made them her power. She turned them into her thing. So the baggy pants and the big clothes and the bubble, the big bubble, the one that everybody knows, big the bubble outfit. Yeah. If you say Missy Elliott and bubble, everyone knows the bubble outfit. And so, and then there's also, and this is something I wish Megan was here to speak on this, that she brought up, which was in our other podcast for Cause We're Black, which is Missy's friendships never went away. And there's a beautiful speech. She just got an award recently where let's see if I can find that award, what she got the award for. But she was talking about how she would not be where she is had it not been for her female friends.
Yep.
And that is something in an age where, Nikki tears down other women all the time because she can't be, and as much as I love Cardi, she doesn't tear down other women, but she doesn't understand how colorism affects how she's portrayed as opposed to Amara La Negra. She doesn't kind of get the difference in how, because Cardi's a light-skinned, acceptably black woman, and there's a difference, or Latina Black woman, she's treated differently than a Marla Negra who's darker than me and also Latina, but you wouldn't know that. And so the industry treats them totally different. And Missy was not having it. And so for me, Missy represents the power of friendships and being yourself. What about you, Mom? Go, what were you saying, Brett?
Oh, I just said absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed Missy's music for quite some time, but when I started doing the research on it, some of what I found out did not completely surprise me, is the fact that she is so intelligent that she was actually skipped a couple of years in school, and she purposely failed so she could get back with her friends because she felt out of place being so much ahead in her schooling with, the other kids around her.
I didn't know that at all.
She, her love for her mother is so that she, unfortunately, as what happens in the backgrounds of many people, no matter what race, background, economics, or anything, domestic abuse. And she, at the age of 14, she decided
to take care of her mom.
Right. And, and she would stay with her mom to make certain that she would be alive because her father was so abusive. Now, her father was a former Marine. And being in the military myself, I don't know what he saw. I know what I saw when I was active duty military and dealing with psychiatric and drug abuse patients. So I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just saying I don't know what perpetrated,
What was the inciting incident? Was it always there or whatever? But it did inform how she dealt with everything.
Right.
And the fact that she stayed, even though she could have left, because she was talented. She was already showing that talent. And she was clearly smart. And yet she stayed in the situation to keep her mom safe, which says a lot too.
Until her mom came up with a plan of action and acted on that plan of action and grabbed up Missy and said, "Girl, time for us to leave."
And it's time to go.
And went out.
Another thing, people forget that she directed her videos, which was unheard of when she was coming up. A lot of people do not realize that most artists in general did not direct their own videos. Missy directed her videos. She wrote full storyboards for her videos. And then if she didn't direct it, she found somebody to do it. So yeah, she is an artist, and honestly, she's a director. And would we have Janelle Monáe and her videos, which are very clearly influenced by Missy, if we didn't have Missy? How many artists have cribbed off of her work when you sit back and really think about the style of her videos? How many people have cribbed off? Because so many people tried to be her, but there's only one. Yeah. There's only one. And we love her.
I must say this. I found out that she is as strapping, 5'2", as is one of the people on this couch.
Okay, but I did get the 2 right. I just mixed it up with the feet and the inches, but I got the 2 right in there.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next person, and that is LeVar Burton.
Yay! Pick out the book. It's reading Rainbow.
So I'm going to start with the youngest person here. Ivana?
Yes.
What do you know LeVar Burton from?
I know him, not deep knowing, but I think there are things that he's done that have been able to make their way to younger generations who might not have experienced his performance. Like there's all these different, through Family Guy or, so many different animations or just sitcoms or other shows. I've seen the whole outfit of Geordie LaForge. Please excuse me if I said that.
It's Geordie LaForge.
I was like, this
Thank
sounds
God.
wrong. Jordan
Thank
LaForge.
God that John or Elena are not on this panel right now, because our friend would be like, no.
Oh, goodness.
But anyway, the yellow Star Trek outfit person with the with the cool glasses to make him not blind anymore. Those are very cool. And also just like I remember being in school and just hearing like the Kunta Kinte like that. So that was something that I heard and I knew about, but it's cool now that we've been doing this research. I can put a face and a name to all of these references that have been part of my life that I didn't even know where they came from. And let me just go ahead and say, great cheekbones, LeVar.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
He did very well.
Fantastic, yeah.
LeVar Burton turned into a zaddy, and I'm not mad at it, so that's fine. That's fine.
And he wants it just as much too. I'm just like,
Right.
I'm here for this.
Right? What about you, Allie?
So I am not a Trekkie.
But
I did grow up with Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow started in 1983. I was born in 84. And between myself, my sister, and Zawadi, we watched it all the time. It was wonderful. A song gets stuck in my head when I hear his name. So just like most children in America, television raised me, and thank goodness that was on television.
right.
Because it made reading more fun, especially for dyslexic people. Made us want to read. And I mean, that show was brilliant. I don't even remember how many awards that said that show received. I think it even got a Peabody Award.
He got a Peabody. It definitely got the Peabody.
And yeah, he's an amazing person. And I do know a little bit of Star Trek, but he does not do the long live and prosper or whatever that is.
Live long and
You're killing me.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Classic line.
Okay, she is making my mother and I lose our minds. My mother just did all
Oh
that.
God. Okay.
You gotta love that classic line from Geordie LaForge as live long and then you're gonna go and you're gonna prosper.
Guys,
Damn.
thank you, Chris. Thank you. I don't even know
And
what's
I'm trying not to. Because I understand every house is different. I'm really trying. It's late. I need more tea. It's late.
Well, now that Allie has traumatized me,
You're welcome.
yay. So for me, I honestly I do not remember him from Reading Rainbow, because I think I was about 7 or 8 when Reading Rainbow came out. So it was a little bit after my time. For me, I remember him from Roots.
Yeah.
That was the first time I saw him. And I was a very small kid when I saw
it came
Roots.
out in 77.
Yeah, I was 1. And then
Well, Star Wars.
yeah, so I was around 1 when Roots like first came out, to give you guys an idea. Like Roots and North and South came out like back to back, and as a little kid, because they did not believe in sugarcoating anything for children back in the day. So those were like the first 2 like TV movies I saw. They were all terrifying, especially for a little Black kid. But it's fine. It's fine, because honestly, and not being sarcastic, those 2 movies and him and that one specifically in Roots, I don't know if they would have gotten made today, because they were unflinching. Like Roots is hard to look at now.
Mhm.
So it was a very unflinching look at what happened to Black people when we found out we were Black, as it were, and not just people. So, and I honestly, in this day and age, I do not know if that film would have gotten made. because it didn't try to sugarcoat it, and it didn't try to do it from white people's point of view. Because as you guys notice, most of the slave-based movies in the last 15, 20 years have all kind of come from the lone white person who thinks this is bad.
The white popo.
Yeah, the white person, the white savior complex. And Roots was not about that.
Well, the author of Roots.
Right, was not. Alex Haley was not about that.
Right.
So it's interesting to me. And then, of course, Geordie, oh, my heart. One of the things I really loved was that, and this is where like my geekdoms collide, was I was like, it was a real life Cyclops for me, with the visor. It was seeing Cyclops, it was seeing basically black Cyclops. He didn't shoot laser beams out of his eyes, but he was like next to Data, and this is on a ship full of smart people. Geordie was the smartest person in the room that wasn't the android.
Yeah.
Which was amazing, and which is also a thing where I'm like, why have we gone backwards in our representation? Star Trek The Next Generation came out 40 years ago. No, 30 years ago. And yet, yeah. And yet we've gone backwards in the way that we represent our black people, our black men. And the other thing was Geordie wasn't neutered, if that makes sense. Geordie was A, the smartest person next to the android, B, super fun, and C, that was something that they actually played up. They didn't try to make him a sexless, asexual, the black guy, the black best friend on the show.
Right. And he could fight.
And he could fight. Yes. Yep. He could do all those things. So for me, Geordie was such an important representation, the same way Uhura was, but it was really inspiring to see a black man, because, you know, to reference Watchmen again, a black man is scary. A white man in the hood is a hero. A black man in the hood is scary. And so, you know, Geordie was representing an intelligent, good-looking, sexy, super smart black man, and he was not terrifying. He was a valued member of the crew. And so it was fantastic, and we will never be able to thank Gene Roddenberry enough, to be honest, you guys.
Yeah.
We really won't, because he helped open the doors. He and the original crew of Star Trek helped break down a lot of doors. And that's what an ally is, for those who are listening. That's how you ally. So yeah, Geordie was, I had the biggest crush on him. I had the biggest, yo. Oh, they could get it so hard. I'm sorry, mother. But all right, Mom, you're up.
Okay. Of course, it being 1977, being a young mother, having moved to an area where I figured my daughter would have a better chance of being represented, or meeting those who represented her. When Roots came out, it may not have been my better choice for her to see what real slavery was about, but I wanted her to see this is not us personally, but this is us as a representation of who we were as a people. We were actual people.
Mm-hmm.
We were mothers, we were fathers, we were sisters and brothers who came over here and were turned into slaves.
And didn't come here. We were brought.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We were brought here.
None of that Texas schools.
Yeah.
No offense, Texas, but none of that. Go on. Sorry.
That was my introduction to LeVar Burton. And then when I saw that he was on Star Trek, which I'm a sci-fi. I just love sci-fi. Flash Gordon, and from young age, you know, I just love sci-fi. So when I saw him on Star Trek, it's like, okay, well, I got to be putting some time. At that time, we didn't have. Oh no, we did have DVRs. Had to get the tape set up so we could record.
Had your VHS tape
set up to record Star Trek, so that just in case I missed something. But that was my introduction, and now he's doing he is going to be doing another presentation on YouTube where he's talking about his experiences as a Black man in the United States and the prejudice that he has come to, and the attempted Jim Crow, the attempted Jim Crow that he has had to face up to being here in the United States. So I'm looking forward to.
When is that going to be out?
You would ask that.
I'm sorry. I'll look it up.
I just read about it. It's like, okay, I've got to put this on my list of things to my YouTube channels.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
I'll look it up for you. What about you, Britt?
So I come from a house filled with LeVar representation. When I was growing up, it was in our house, it was understood in our house that during the week, Jordy would read to us, and then we go on our space adventures. Like, so it was just visors on, we're going to space. Visors off, we're reading stories. But then we also went ahead. It was that perfect middle between everybody, it seems, because even now we still have LeVar Burton. Because when I go ahead and I watch my younger nieces and nephews, we often listen to LeVar Burton reads on his podcast on Stitcher. But yeah, it's one of those where when it came to LeVar, he was always a household name in our house, whether it was through Reading Rainbow, whether it was through Star Trek or from Roots. He always seemed to be there with every generation in our house and continues to be. So it's one of those, so it's like LeVar's a staple. He's just a staple. He's one of the people that, he's a legend, and I feel that he's highly underrated as well. Because there are people, at least, like, whenever you hear him, or like whenever you hear like songs like Reading Rainbow, nobody really kind of associates him with being a legend out, like, per se. They just, yes, I know this, I know that about him, I know about LeVar, but it's never one of those where you associate him with being one of the living legends that we have today.
Yeah, I think he's very underrated and taken for granted. And I don't know how that could be possible when, in my mind, he belongs up there with Mr. Rogers and with Bob Ross.
Yeah.
As people have influenced generations of kids to be better, to be kind, to be smart, to show empathy, to love people. And he's done it for quite literally everyone who's on this podcast. He has been a part of every person on this podcast, regardless of age range, from the youngest to the oldest lives, almost all of our lives. That, to me, I don't know how he could be considered anything but a legend from that point on. So yeah, I just, I want him to be appreciated, and I am very much looking forward to seeing whether or not he pops up on Picard. And it does.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah, I'm like, I haven't watched yet, so I don't want to so I'm hoping he will. I know that Whoopi is coming back for season 2 after being asked in person by and being made to cry by Patrick Stewart, who asked her live on the air of The View if she would come back for season 2. And she burst out into tears and was like, yes. So I'm hoping, because we've had 3 so far. So I'm hoping we get, maybe we get the whole crew back on Picard. I would be not opposed to that. And I know a few people who would do what I did when I was watching Doctor Who the other night and lose their minds, but that's a whole other podcast. So last but certainly not least, we got to talk about the Jada songs. Jada. So this is another person who I feel like I've been watching most of my life because I feel like the first time I saw her was on A Different World. Baltimore girl,
Yes.
Baltimore born and bred. Baltimore. She actually went to school with my first boyfriend ever's sister. She went to the Baltimore School of the Arts. Yeah, with them. So Jada Pinkett Smith. She is just. It's weird because I'm saying it's a Jada song, but Jada never really went away. She just had quiet periods. But it feels like the last 2 or 3 years, Jada has been everywhere. From Gotham to Girls Trip to Red Table Talk. I mean, is it me or is it just like Jada has been everywhere? And I'm not mad at it at all. Not whatsoever. Allie?
So I think she's been a bit busier lately because, first of all, her kids are a lot older.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she made them a priority.
And motherhood was a big priority for her.
Yeah.
It's not like they were suffering for money. She could take some time and actually
Be a parent.
be a wonderful parent because her kids have turned out phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
They really have.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So amazing mother, amazing actress, hilarious.
Oh my God, Girls Trip, you guys.
Oh my God. Like, oh my gosh. She's timeless. Like she is. She's
And not just because she's not aging.
yeah. You know what they say? I can't, but you know what they say?
I can.
But it's her and her entire kingdom that she has made
Yes.
it's wonderful to look up to
Yeah.
because she has a wonderful family with amazing values, huge hearts, intellectual, and I will watch anything that she does.
For real.
Honestly.
Like, for real.
Her husband, her children, I can't wait to see what else they do.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that they're in this world.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, Jada, Jada inspires me, and I don't use that word often for people who are in my age range, if that makes sense. There are not a lot of people because our stories aren't written yet, if that makes sense. So it's not a lot of people who I genuinely go, you are an inspiration, but Jada is an inspiration. She has taken life by the balls and just run with it. And there is nothing she cannot do. And yet she is never, and the other thing which I always find interesting is that people who try to tear her down, because I know you guys all know about like some of the Chris Rock stuff and some of the Janet Hoover stuff.
Mhm.
She doesn't respond to it. And
Yeah.
to me is exactly, to me, that is the perfect response, is to go, I'm gonna love you enough to ignore you and keep on moving. I'm gonna go live my life and keep moving. And there is something to that, especially in our current day and age, in our current
Twitter and
Instagram, everything else. The mindset of, I don't have to prove myself to you. I can just be me, and I'm going to keep doing what I do and let the proof be in the pudding.
mm-hmm.
Let the seeds I have sown grow. My children are my proof. My body of work are my proof. My charities are my proof. The fact that she has been working tirelessly on the down low for the protection of LGBTQA, specifically trans kids. The fact that she has been very outspoken about the fact that Black boys get sex trafficked too. These are all things that, you know what, you don't need to respond to that. And to me, that is something I strive for because, folks tried to come at me on Twitter. And I tried so hard not to respond. And there are days that I fail, and there are days that I don't. And so to me, she's inspiring because she's very much grace and humor and talent and honesty. That whole Red Table Talk where she talked about the fact that she and Will went through a really hard time, and that no matter what it looked like on the outside, they are not perfect. That was something I needed to hear as somebody else who's been in a long-term marriage, that it's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay. And so I love her so much. And that's not even getting into the fact that Fish Mooney was so iconic that DC actually made her a member.
Right.
Made her a character in the DC comics. She created a character on a TV show and they made her she was so iconic they made her a character in the comics. That's amazing. What other Black actress has done that? Tell me. That's not Eartha Kitt. And Eartha Kitt was playing Catwoman, who was already an established character.
Yep. Okay, you got me there because I was about to be like, okay, you got me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Mama, go.
I have loved her. I will really. She caught my attention on A Different World, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, gotta keep an eye on that little one. She didn't have that much of a role, but what she did with that little bit she did, it's like going back to Star Wars, where the woman is talking about so many people.
Mon Mothma.
Right.
That little 5 minutes was an iconic moment. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, gotta keep an eye on. So I started like looking for her and different things, and I was just looking at the listing of movies that they say, but they're missing some of the movies that she was in. She was in
Set It Off.
And Set It Off.
Set It Off, which was her and Queen Latifah and Kimberly Elise. Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my
God. We gotta watch that for girls' night. Yeah. Okay.
Christopher Walker. It was so crazy.
Christopher Walken.
Christopher
Walken. 8 hits in the bag, in a double bag. Oh, Prophecy. Yes.
She was in
That's right. That's right.
Right. And so she and getting back to her and LeVar Burton, you know, as I watch Belle develop her acting skills, which she's had from the first time I ever saw her on stage, having longevity in this business says something. And both of these people have had longevity in this business, even with her backing up to take care of what was most important. Maybe that's the reason why she does have longevity, because she took care of what was most important, her children and her husband. And then when they got to a certain point, okay, now I can get back out there again. Lots of people need to remember that, and she's a great example of that.
Yeah. What about you, Greg?
For me, it was she was the badass in the Bantu knots in Matrix.
Yes!
That was my first time of really kind of like seeing her as who she is, which is just like, you know, I'm not going to take crap from anybody.
Not even you.
This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And I'm going to go ahead and kick these assholes out, and I'm going to be awesome. And I was like, that was amazing. It was like that. I wanted a snakeskin red jacket like that for the longest time. And I never got it.
I'm sorry, baby.
So bad now. But it was like with a lot of the other stuff that she was in prior to that, I was still like a little young to appreciate it. That like when the Matrix movies came out was when I fully was like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, she's awesome. Oh my gosh, she's doing all these crazy stuff like everybody else is. And she's just as much in the forefront as everybody else is, kicking ass and taking names. And I loved it. And then after that, it just slowly kind of snowballed into me really always enjoying her presence when I see her pop up. Instead of just like seeing her as another character. Or just seeing her as another like actor or actress that's just put themselves out there. And I was like, but every time, no matter what type of role she's in, or even with the Red Table Talks, I always really just enjoy her presence on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? She's just, like going back to the honesty with her, and just whenever she presents herself, she has that aura of grace, of honesty, of just putting herself out there and just giving it her all, whether it is like when she's talking about herself, when she's talking with her mom and her daughter, or she's doing badass stuff like when she was in the Matrix. And it's always so, I always walk away feeling a lot more pleasant whenever I see her on film or wherever I see her pop up. And I love it. I love
She
her.
makes you feel good.
Yeah.
There's something that makes you feel good. And I mean, like, how many actors or actresses can you honestly say that who genuinely delight you? Like,
Right.
their presence makes you feel delighted.
Yeah.
All right, baby. Ivana, our baby girl.
Oh my goodness. So Jada, where to begin? From the beginning, for me, I think is the way to go. The first time I ever saw her on anything was in The Nutty Professor.
Oh,
Yo.
I forgot about that.
That is my first Jada memory that I have, and I felt the same thing of like, I was excited anytime she was gonna come back on the screen. I was obsessed with her. I think we even like at my dad's house had a copy of Woo. Like, I never saw the movie, but I was obsessed with the cover. I was just like, even as just as an image of her standing and staring, I was just like mesmerized by this woman, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this, like I just like would just stare at movie covers all the time and just like, oh my gosh, she's incredible. But yeah, it was so great. And then I think it wasn't until like a few years ago, just spending more time in Baltimore instead of the suburbs where I come from, they'd be like, did you know Jada's from here? Oh yeah. Jada's from here. Jada's ours. Because the area I grew up in, it was all about like Cal Ripken and that, like, oh, Cal Ripken, he's our guy. He was here doing this, and it's like, okay, but like, what about the people who represent me and where I come from and my background? So it was really exciting to know that about her, and just this awesome foundation that she has in Baltimore that helps families in the community. She's still doing work here, even if she's not here. So that's awesome. But yeah, I think so. The first time I saw her was in The Nutty Professor. And then it wasn't until I think years later, I don't know how many years later, that the next thing I saw was on the news or something of her in like a metal band. And I was like, what?
Yeah. I forgot
Good.
I remember the Jada everyone else forgot. That is what I'm saying. But she was like in this metal band, and then the next thing, it's like, again, years later for me, things I noticed here and there, like in The Matrix, but just like doing, Girls Trip, Bad Moms, Magic Mike, XXL.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what I love about my memories of her is just that they're all so different. And then, of course, going into Red Table Talk and all of that, it's just what I think is so iconic about her and wonderful about her is that through the years, I saw her as like a completely different person each time. And I just think that speaks to how you really cannot put her in a box. She can do anything, and she will do anything, and it's her damn prerogative to do whatever the hell she wants. And I think we get a lot of like women saying that, and we're like, I can do whatever I want, I can do this, and that's great and that's awesome, and it's good to put that energy out there, but to actually see a woman doing whatever the hell she wants, I think is just so empowering and phenomenal. And there's also an image that really stands out to me is with her Red Table Talk show is how sometimes they will, I've only seen a few episodes, but I just love when Jada and her mother and her daughter all walk to the table together.
Yes.
And they leave together. And so it's just such a beautiful image to have, to where we're all deciding, we're accepting to come have difficult conversations together. We're going to stay here. And you know what? At the end of it, we're still going to leave together no matter where the conversation took us. And I just love that her love of women, especially, you know, women in her family, but just women in general, just comes through so clear in that show, what she does and a lot of her work. So yeah, that's what I love about Jada.
Sweet. Well, ladies, it's come to the end of our time. I am so glad that this is our first show of the year. I'm so glad to have all of you with me. Britt, for the first time, she's been lurking in the chat.
She sure has.
For a year. But she's here. You can see us. We will be at Phantom Comics in 2 weeks. We will be, not all of the Lovely Angels, but some of the Lovely Angels will be at Phantom Comics, talking comic books, talking movies. You can see me at on stage on February 29th at the I forgot where I'm going to be on stage. The Function. Oh my God, you guys, I haven't slept a lot. Or at all in like 3 days. It's fine. It's fine. This is fine. You can see Ivana in New York touring with the American Immersion Theater. You can see both of us touring with the American Immersion Theater. I'm here on the Baltimore end. Ivana is in New York if you want to see her. Let me tell you something. I've done a lot of shows with a lot of people, and Ivana Green is damn funny and an amazing director. And if you want to go and just be amused and delighted and have a genuine good time, go see her in a show. You can see Britt doing everything, all the things. You can commission her for beautiful fashion. If you guys haven't seen it, some of her work was featured at Creative Alliance for their fundraiser for Baltimore City Schools. You can see the beautiful Allie. She and I will be doing the brunch cast in 2 weeks. And we will be doing that and talking books and movies and television shows and all the things on what? All the
virtual reality site.
And of course you can see Allie's amazing Gambit cosplay. She cosplayed as Rogue. Now she's cosplaying as Gambit, and it's amazing.
Because I don't need no man.
She don't need no man. And that's right. So for all, I said all that, and of course you can see my mother. She will be at every event.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because she is a supportive parent, which is unfortunately rare. So said all that to say thank you all. Right. Thank you all for sitting in with us. This is Belle with Pop Culture Uncovered, and we are the Lovely Angels. We will be back in a month or two with our next coverage and our next Patreon podcast. Thank you all for supporting us on Patreon, for backing us up as we go forward with Pop Culture Uncovered in new and undiscovered ways. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PC Uncovered on Twitter and Instagram, and Pop Culture Uncovered on Facebook, and popcultureuncovered.com. Thank you all.